Hello and welcome. Today I wanted to discuss and show you how we're going to build our wireless follow focus kit. This kit would allow your first AC or your focus puller to pull focus away from camera, whether it be on a stand or handheld, such as this. Alright, so we're going to go over the components of the follow focus rig. Here are all the components to our follow focus rig. Starting from camera right, we have our gold mount battery charger, 2-bay, the cable for that, 2 gold mount micro 98s. And here we have our right handle and the left handle, allowing you to pull focus, pull zoom as well if you'd like. And you have your attachments for that, for the handles. These circle ones are for your gimbals. And then these are for RE rosette type connections. So for our RE, we have RE rosette connections on the bridge plate. You can attach that there if you could fit it. And right here we have our monitor mount. There's 2 sides to it. One would hold the monitor, and the other ideally would hold the wireless follow focus. We also have a cheese rod, which will support the monitor on one end and the fizz on the other. And then in the center, we'll have a baby pin attachment so that you can throw it onto a stand. You also have the 18650 or pillar style battery charger, which you would use to charge the fizz batteries. Currently, we equip the kit with 2. Right here, we have our 2 motors that you'll attach onto your camera and string them up so that way you can control it with your fizz or your handles. You can set up your motors to either focus and zoom, or zoom and iris, focus iris, whichever one you'd care for. So we have blank focus rings so that you can mark your lenses and map your lenses. We have an Indy 7 monitor, a small HD with a gold mount battery plate. So you can attach your batteries onto, and you get. And then in the bag right here we have 3 cables. Your D-tap to 7-pin connection will go from the power distribution into your first motor. If you're using a second motor, you would use these 7-pin to 7-pin and daisy chain your motors. And we'll go over that later on in the video. There's one shorter cable for if you're attaching basically right next to it, but sometimes you might link the cables up from each side of your rods. To fully use this kit, you're going to need a wireless video transmission system, transmitters on the camera, and receivers on the unit. We have 2 receivers at the school, Teradek and Hollyland. Both these units are HDMI and SDI, so they should be able to work with any of the cameras that we have at the school available. Both kits will come with a power cable, a P-tap for the Teradek, P-tap to LEMO, 2-pin LEMO, and then for the Hollyland, it's a 12-volt barrel connection to D-tap. And the D-tap or P-tap you'll connect into your power distribution box. Today we're going to exemplify with the Hollyland. Okay, so these are the follow focus kit components, and we're gonna basically build the rig right now. For building the main AC rig, these parts become a little bit unuseful, so I'm gonna set these to the side. I'll put my battery chargers together. Ideally, once I'm getting to second AC is going to be setting those up near power and making sure that our batteries are charging. So in building the rig, one of the first things I might do is insert the batteries. You got a positive and negative side. Just be aware of what you're doing, because if you put it in inadvertently, or if you put it in wrong, you're going to have a fizz that's not working. Way to turn on the fizz would be clicking and holding this Tilta logo right there. And you can see it turn on. You'll feel it turn on. It vibrates. and then you can see that the wheel is pushing that focus mark back and forth, and you know it's working. We'll go a little bit more into the fizz in just a couple moments, but we're going to continue to build the rig. To turn off the unit, you click and hold the Tilta button again for about 3 seconds, and it'll turn off. And so to begin putting everything together, I'm probably going to start with articulating this dog bone right here, unscrewing this red lever, and swinging this upwards like that. That way, when I'm holding the unit, it's going to be out like that. The fizz is right here. Next thing I might do is put in the cheese rod. You want to make sure that your little M6 screws are undone. Stick the rod in there like that. And you can keep her tight or you can keep her loose just for the meantime. It doesn't necessarily matter, but you're going to be setting it up, so maybe keep it loose. And then next thing I'm probably going to do is put in the baby pin receiver. I'll likely put it towards the middle of the rod. That way, when it's on the stand, the weight distribution is balanced, so to speak. So I'm gonna loosen this up a little bit. Get it towards the middle. And you screw that in nice and tight. So now you put this on the stand and it'll stay there. Next step I'm gonna do is put on the monitor mount onto the cheese rod. And there's a little bit of a trick to this. You don't want to get the monitor mount or the fizz lock in the center of the cheese rod where it starts to thin out. You might have a chance of whether it's the monitor or the fizz, when you're holding it, it might slip. So my recommendation is to have the monitor mount and the fizz mount on the ends of the cheese rod, where the 15mm rod is complete at all diameter. Now you got your monitor mount on. Next thing I would do is go ahead and put it on the monitor. And again, there's also a little trick with this. I would not necessarily put this towards the center, just because the weight distribution and the sizing of everything, it becomes very spread out and kind of unbalanced. So my recommendation would be to figure out where you want to align this screw onto this monitor. And it's usually on the right of the center of the connection. I do about the second hole on this side of the portion, this second hole right here. And I do it in there. That way I will still have access to stick in an SDI if necessary. Alternatively, you could do it on this side. Just again, be wary that you're not blocking any of your HDMI ports if that's what you're using. So I'm gonna go ahead and screw this in. The monitor mount, I have a little bit extended forward because if this is flush with this end of the monitor mount, it's gonna block the SDI port. So now we got most of our rig built together. The next step I'm gonna do is put on our battery. That way we can figure out what kind of spacing we would need for our wireless receiver. Now that we got our battery on, you can kind of see that the receiver is not necessarily gonna fit onto that back portion of the monitor mount. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is grab a strong arm, cine arm. All right, so I'm gonna mount it onto the rig first, and on the back side of the monitor, there's these thread points underneath the battery. That's where I'm gonna go ahead and put the strong arm. When I'm putting it in, I'm also keeping the rubber side for the receiver. That way, if there's any play on the turn or it doesn't reach the end of the screw, I could push this little rubber thing up and we'll get a nice little grip on the receiver. So you got it screwed in. Now I'll go ahead and tighten that and just make sure that it's very tight onto that thread connection. Then you can unloosen it and maybe find an accommodating position for your receiver. So I'm gonna go ahead and put on the receiver. And you can see that it's not fully connecting or fully touching that rubber pad. So I'm just going to loosen that side and spin that up. That way you got a nice firm connection, and if it slips a little bit, that rubber is holding onto it, so it's not going to just like go nuts. So now I'm going to adjust this receiver. That way it's kind of flush to our unit. Give a little bit of space so you can still remove your battery. And then tighten that up. So now you have more or less what the follow focus unit is going to look like. And if you caught there, it kind of slid a little bit. If everything's not super tight, it can do something like that. And you want to refrain from doing that. Again, keep your monitor mount and your fizz mount at the ends of the connections, and just make sure that they're very tight, grip tight. So now we got basically what the rig will look like when completed. So now we're gonna go, now that our rig is built with our receiver, we're gonna go ahead and put in the power cable to the receiver, which is 12 volt to P-tap or D-tap. On the back end of the monitor, on the side right here, we have a D-tap connection port. We're gonna go ahead and put that into there. The end of the cable shoots upward. That's how you would know. Don't kind of force it into the other way because it's not gonna go that way. Also, the leads inside, they're set to positive or negative. So if you put it in the incorrect way, you have a chance of sparking some sort of short. So I'm gonna thread this or make this like as tidy as possible. Shoot that cable up and then stick her in. So now you got your receiver plugged in and you got it turned on, but you got no visual. So you need to put in a visual cable, whether it's HDMI or SDI. For this build, I'm gonna do HDMI, and you got HDMI in and HDMI out on the back end of your monitor on its left side. So you can go ahead and flip it over, flip it upside down, whatever you need to do to make sure that this HDMI cable goes in. And then you're gonna route the cable to the receiver side and make sure that that gets plugged in to the out. So give it a couple moments, make sure that you're on HDMI mode on the monitor, and then there you can see we have a feed. And then if this follow focus was connected to that camera, you can see me going in and out of focus. All right, now that we got our handheld rig basically built, we're gonna go ahead and set this to the side, or you can set it onto a stand, and we're gonna find our motors and our camera. Right here we got the 6K Pro with the DZO zooms. We got focus, zoom, iris, and in theory you can attach both motors if you'd like, focus and zoom or focus and iris. If you had an extra motor, you can do all three and control them all from the fizz unit right here. All right, so you can set up your motor on either side of the camera, left or right. Doesn't really matter. However, just some things to know, that if you are putting this on the right side of the camera, there is a little LED screen that if you're staring at a reflective surface, it might reflect some blue light back at the camera, or you might see it in the reflection. But that's something that's kind of easily solved by either gaff tape, or if you know in advance that that's going to happen, you go ahead and put it on your left side. That way you eliminate any possible predicament. But I'm going to go ahead and put it on the right side. That way, if anyone's in front of me, they see that it's on or off, they can let me know. But I'll start with go ahead and unloosening the thumb screw. And this little rod holder, it can come right off. You can put it onto the bottom. You can set this upside down, right side up. It doesn't really matter, but depending on how you're building your camera, one setup might be more beneficial than the other. For instance, if you need a little bit more like spacing upwards, you'd have this where the rod holder is on the bottom rather than on the top. And it'll give you that extra maybe a millimeter or inch and a half where you could shoot kind of upwards. If none of that really matters, you could just put it in however. However, am going to put it on where the 15mm thing's on the bottom, because I do have this on a cart, and otherwise it'd be kind of like sticking up like that. So with an unloosened thumb screw, I'm going to attach it to the 15mm rod like so. Slide it down. Because I am going to set 2 motors, I'm just going to slide this straight to zoom. And then we got it into position, and I'm going to lock it. These screws, I would not do death grip tight. I would not do extremely tight, just enough where it's not going to slide when it's shooting that motor back and forth or side to side. And you'll make those adjustments once you get everything connected and you know that the torque settings is also correct with your fizz and motors for your lens. So I'm going to also unscrew this one and slide her in as so. And when setting these motors, you want to make sure that the wheel on the motor is gripping into the teeth of the lens, or of the positioning on the lens that you're assigning it to. So this is on zoom. This is on focus. This is on zoom. So now we need to power up the motors, and we got 3 cables that we have in that kit. We're gonna grab the P-tap to 7-pin LEMO. Now, whether you put it into P-tap or 7-pin first, doesn't really matter. But I don't connect both of them until I fully string out like how the camera or how the cable is going to be around the camera, because I like clean builds. So now we got our P-tap into our distribution center, and I'm going to go ahead and try to make this cable wrap around the camera as efficiently as possible without using any extra sources like cable ties, straps, or anything like that. But you just want to make sure that the cable itself is not feeling tension in any location or however you're building it. So now you may be like, oh, what port do I put it in? There's labels on each port. You got 2 ports right here on each side of the motors, external or extension 1, extension 2. When you're powering a motor up, you're going to go into the extension port 1. You find whichever that one is, and boom. So now we got our first motor cable that's attached into our power distribution. So power is coming into our motors. Now to connect one motor to the other, we have 2 cables to do so. A 7-pin to 7-pin LEMO, and another 7-pin to 7-pin LEMO. But you can tell that the size differences are different. So because they're right next to each other, I'm likely going to just use the short cable. So I'm going to go ahead and put this from external port 2 into external port 1 on the second motor. And they should, if I'm going to go ahead and power on the motors, they should both power up. So you can see that they're both powered up by the little lights on the side. And you can see the settings of that motor on the front LED portion. Now before I move further down the line, I'm going to go ahead and put on the lens support for the lens, because it's a little heavy lens for this mount. But with also the motors and the torque that's attached to them, they're going to push this wheel back and forth, and you're going to have a little bit of play for your lens. So to reduce that, you have a lens support LWS system. So I'm going to go ahead and attach that. And cool. So now we got both our motors connected. And if I go ahead and turn the focus wheel, you can see that the focus on the lens is changing. And then if I pull back the zoom or push forward the zoom, that the zoom adjusts. You could do it simultaneously. You could pull and zoom simultaneously on 2 different motors from the same unit. If you had a third motor, you can control the iris all from the same unit. That about sums it up for our follow focus rig with the wireless video and the 2-motor setup. If you wanted to get your hands on it and get more experience with the building of this rig for any of your future films, please come to the equipment room. We're located in building 2 underneath the SCDT office. Our number is 305-237-8224. And my name is Kevin. Hope you have a great day.